documents that detail financial and attorney-client information for more than 214,000 offshore entities whose anonymous leaker Russian intelligence analysts maintain is a secretive and mysterious U.S. military intelligence organization known only as QAnon, and about whom veteran American investigative reporter and best-selling author Dr. Jerome Corsi revealed was a group of generals who told him that Trump had been recruited by U.S. military intelligence to run in the 2016 presidential election and subsequently help remove corrupt deep state officials from positions of power. And today, in protection of, sees Dr. Corsi in a battle to the death with Special Counsel Robert Mueller, whom he refuses to even talk to anymore. With the Panama Papers revealing the wholesale corruption of socialist globalists the world over, this report explains their destructive power can only be described as catastrophic, best exampled by the events that occurred after they were lobbed like an atomic bomb on Brazil's leftist political class, and in whose aftermath saw Brazil's 35th President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva being impeached from office and jailed, and his successor, Brazilian's 36th President Dilma Rousseff, likewise being thrown out of office, thus leading the Brazilian people to elect to power their new president Jair Bolsonaro, who is now known as the Trump of the tropics. With President Trump being set upon by his nation's deep state apparatus as soon as he took power, of course, their coup plot to frame him in a made-up Russian hoax scheme in their bid to clear Hillary Clinton from her crimes has met with repeated failure, with it being revealed this past week that Special Counsel Robert Mueller is preparing to end game for the Russian investigation, while at the same time President Trump's loyalists in the U.S. Congress are prepared to hold a hearing on the Department of Justice investigation into the Clinton Foundation. Most important to understand about these machinations now occurring in the United States is that the entire adversarial two-party system controlled the U.S. government operates using a psychological technique to govern and manipulate public opinion called dueling narratives, a form of narrative that tells a story in two different perspectives, which in this instance is pitting President Trump's crimes against Hillary Clinton's crime. In other words, what I've said all along, ladies and gentlemen, it's just two corporations battling against each other for position. While President Trump's crimes, though, fall into the category of made-up offenses, subject to who will believe them, of course, called subjective and based on or influenced by personal feelings, tastes, or opinions, this report does note that Hillary Clinton's crimes are rooted in fact and probable evidence, called objective and not influenced by personal feelings or opinions, or representing facts. With President Trump not being able to fully defend himself against these subjective crimes he's being accused of until Special Counsel Mueller releases his final report, which will obviously reveal nothing, and he knows what they are. This report points out, once it is released, of course, and no matter how bad it makes him appear, President Trump will immediately counterattack by arresting and putting on trial Hillary Clinton for her objective crimes, thus creating for the American people the most consequential dueling narrative political war they've seen in their entire nation's history, and at least in our lifetime, and that will see President Trump doing everything in his power to put Clinton in jail where she belongs, while the deep state does everything in its power to impeach President Trump before he can even do that. Again, ladies and gentlemen, it's just two corporations battling against each other. As President Trump is one of the most accomplished showmen, having decades of highly successful television and promotional experience, his arresting and putting on trial Hillary Clinton can only be described as a celebrity death match, and that the American people will be played out in real time on their television screens as Clinton is marched continuously into U.S. federal courtrooms, that at the same time the Democrats in the U.S. House of Representatives will counter with impeachment hearings, a battle the Democrats are losing before they've even begun after Democratic Party U.S. Senator Mazie Hirono shockingly declared that because the Democrats know so much, they are now too smart for the average American voter to understand. With it being highly debatable if the American people are, in fact, too dumb to understand these Democrats protecting Hillary Clinton. However, this report does note they will most assuredly be able to understand and comprehend what President Trump is doing, and whose actions is amassing criminal evidence against Clinton to arrest and put her on trial over the past few weeks alone include November 21st, Trump-loyal FBI forces joining their foreign counterparts in raiding Hillary Clinton money laundering banks throughout Europe. On November 29th, Trump-loyal FBI forces raiding the offices of Alderman Edward Burke, a powerful Chicago politician who has held his position in Chicago politics for over 50 years and knows where all the Obama-Clinton bodies are buried. Again, on November 29, 2018, Trump-loyal U.S. Department of Justice officials filing criminal charges against Hillary Clinton mega donor Abdul Huma Farouk. And on November 29th of 2018, Trump-loyal FBI forces raiding the home of Dennis Nathan Cain to establish a chain of custody and evidence stream proving Hillary Clinton was bribed in the Uranium One scheme. So, for the first time in history, all three of Russia's intelligence agency chiefs having traveled to Washington, D.C. earlier this year to turn over to loyal President Trump forces the documents showing the bribery money laundering trail used by Hillary Clinton, and as exposed by the Panama Papers, this report concludes the last game piece awaited by Russian intelligence officials to signal when Clinton was nearing arrest and trial was put into place on the Celebrity Deathmatch gaming board this last week. And this is when loyal Trump forces announced their criminal charges against Mossack Fonseca, the legal firm from whom the Panama Papers were taken by QAnon himself, and three of whose top officers are now in U.S. custody singing like birds. Thus, leaving all that remains to be seen is when President Trump will fulfill his promise to the American people and finally lock her up.
Good evening, Bill. In the cases of those Democratic operatives who are now being investigated by federal prosecutors, there are no charges yet, and that is perhaps why there is far more focus right now on President Trump's former campaign chairman, Paul Manafort, whose trial on bank and tax fraud charges is obviously underway. So we'll start there tonight, with the judge in the case telling prosecutors that their focus so far on Paul Manafort's lavish lifestyle, quote, isn't relevant. Judge T.S. Ellis adding that it's not a crime to be wealthy. Prosecutors were also told not to use the word oligarchs to describe the wealthy Ukrainians with whom Manafort did business because the word implied that Manafort was associating with, quote, despicable people and therefore he's despicable. That's not the American way, the judge said. President Trump again weighed in on the trial today, tweeting, quote, looking back on history, who was treated worse, Alphonse Capone, legendary mob boss killer and public enemy number one, or Paul Manafort, political operative and Reagan doll darling, now serving solitary confinement although convicted of nothing? Where is the Russian collusion? Now to those other political operatives with Democrat Party ties. Special Counsel Robert Mueller has referred the cases of former lobbyist Tony Podesta and former Obama White House counsel Greg Craig to New York prosecutors, and the Southern District of New York has Fox News has confirmed, opened investigations into them over potential illegal foreign lobbying. Tony Podesta is the chairman of the Podesta Group and brother of John Podesta, Hillary Clinton's former presidential campaign chairman. Tony Podesta is being investigated for failing to register his work on behalf of foreign agents, in this case the government of the Ukraine. Craig, the former White House counsel, worked for a law firm that also did business on behalf of a Russian-backed former Ukrainian president. As I mentioned, no charges yet in those cases, nor are there any charges in a similar investigation of former Republican Congressman Vin Weber, nor for that matter in the case of President Trump's former personal attorney Michael Cohen, a case obviously getting a lot more attention than the one against the Democrat-linked operatives, perhaps because it's linked to a sitting rather than former president, or perhaps because it involves Playboy models rather than arcane lobbying laws. But the investigations bill showed just how many names of political operatives and lobbyists are coming up in the Mueller investigation, and how a lot of people who did even a little business with or on behalf of foreign governments, organizations, or individuals might have reason to be worried tonight.